from the campus of the University of Nebraska at Omaha. Consider This, a program of issues and information behind today's news.
I'm not here to call out his lies. Everybody knows he's a liar.
But you
I just
agree.
want to make sure.
Joe, you're the liar.
I want to make sure.
Graduated last in your class, not first in your class.
I want to make
Mr.
sure.
President, can you let him finish, sir?
You question
is,
a lot of
the
new
question
Supreme Court
is,
justice,
the
radical
question-
left.
Will you shut up, man?
Listen, I mean, I have a mask right here. I put a mask on, when I think I need it. Tonight, as an example, everybody's had a test, and you've had social distancing and all of the things that you have to. But I
Just
wear
like your
masks
rallies.
when needed. When needed, I wear masks.
Okay, let me ask.
I don't wear masks like him. Every time you see him, he's got a mask. He could be speaking 200 feet away from it. He shows up with the biggest mask I've ever seen.
Masks make a big difference. His own head of the CDC said if we just wore masks between now, everybody wore masks in social distance between now and January, we'd probably save up to 100,000 lives. It matters.
And they've also said the opposite. They've also said
no serious person said the opposite.
I don't want to pay tax. Before I came here, I was a private developer. I was a private business people. Like every other private person, unless they're stupid, they go through the laws, and that's what it is.
I'm going to eliminate the Trump tax cuts, and I'm going to eliminate those tax cuts and make sure that we invest in the people who, in fact, need the help. People out there need help.
But why didn't you do it over the last 25 years?
Because you weren't president.
Because
you weren't president screwing things up.
You were a senator. And
You're
by
the
way,
worst
you were a
president America has ever had.
Hey,
Come
Joe,
on.
you want to call him? What do you want to call him? Give me a name. Give me a
White
name. Go ahead.
supremacists and
Who would
white
you like me to condemn?
White supremacists and right
Proud
militia.
Boys, stand back and stand by. But I'll tell you what.
This is all about trying to dissuade people from voting because he's trying to scare people into thinking that it's not going to be legitimate.
I'm urging my supporters to go into the polls and watch very carefully because that's what has to happen. I am urging them to do it.
He has no idea what he's talking about. Here's the deal. The fact is, I will accept it, and he will too. You know why? Because once the winner is declared after all the ballots are counted, all the votes are counted, that'll be the end of it.
Hi, everyone. I'm Kathy Wyatt. Welcome to this week's edition of Consider This, brought to you from my home in compliance with UNO's COVID-19 guidelines. Our topic, the first 2020 presidential debate. Joining us via Zoom to talk more about it is Gregory Petro. Gregory is an associate professor in the Department of Political Science at UNO. Gregory, thank you so much for joining us to talk about this today, and welcome.
You are welcome, and it's my pleasure to be here.
Thank you. I want to start with your thoughts on that opening video.
Well, I watched the debate live, and watching the video just brought back all the nightmares. And my thoughts were, I just want to hold my head in my hands and cry. It was pretty brutal, very distasteful, and I mean, your viewers, I'm sure, have watched a lot of the media coverage and commentary on it, and to be completely unoriginal, I mean, it's the most horrendous presidential debate I've ever seen in my life, including all of the historical playbacks from previous debates that occurred before I was even born. So it was pretty bad.
Okay. Having said that, Gregory, what are debates supposed to be?
Ideally, I mean, gosh, in a perfect world, there wouldn't even be a moderator, and you would probably have some agreed upon topics, and each speaker would probably present a 5 to 7 minute or 8 minute case on a topic, and it might be kind of like high school Lincoln Douglas debate or some kind of team debate or something like that, and the other side would have some time to kind of craft a response, and it would be very substantive. Obviously there'd be no talking over each other at all. And raising voices a little bit might be okay. But it would be characterized by fundamental reciprocity and respect and rational discussion.
And this particular debate was actually 90 minutes, broken into 6 segments, right? 15 minutes each. And those segments were chosen by the debate moderator. And we're going to put those up on our screen for the viewers. They are in no particular order: the Trump and Biden records, the Supreme Court, COVID-19, the economy, race and violence in cities, and the integrity of the election. As we look at that list, Gregory, how did they do?
I guess, if we're talking about the degree to which the candidates addressed substance on the topics, I think that, my impression of watching the whole 90 minutes was right out the gate, the president decided, or maybe didn't decide, it just kind of worked out that way, but that he was going to just kind of roll over Biden and interject and talk over him. And my impression was, Biden kind of responded by doing some of the same back. And so initially, I couldn't understand anything anyone was saying for quite a while, for minutes on end. And then I think, President Trump started to calm down a little bit, and he started interjecting less. And I think Vice President Biden calmed down a little bit more. And there were some moments of substance, where the candidates were able to talk about their positions. To some degree, there was a little bit of discussion of specific program kinds of things, but it was very light. So overall, in terms of, it wasn't a complete and utter failure. There were moments, of substance that, you could kind of pick out, but overall, the substance should be the rule, not the exception. So it didn't go very well overall.
Well, and I want to talk about the debate moderator for just a minute. In this case, it was Chris Wallace, right, of Fox News. It seemed to me as though he lost control just in those first few minutes there, and really had a tough time getting it back if he ever did. Do you agree with that? And what could he have done to have changed the outcome in this particular debate?
Yeah, obviously we don't know exactly what he was thinking or experiencing. My impression was that he was probably as taken aback by what was happening as anyone. And even though he is, an acclaimed and highly respected journalist of great notoriety, even given that, he is still sitting in front of the President of the United States and the last vice president. And so, it would be hard I have some sympathy for him. I know he's gotten a lot of criticism for what happened. And it's probably justified, but I do have sympathy that, being in that position, I could really understand it. It would take someone a while to really kind of register what's happening and then decide, okay, I'm going to really have to assert myself here and make this happen. And it did take him a while to do it. And then he did do it. And I think, he was probably 70% successful. Things were better after he started asserting himself. But yeah, I have sympathy for the guy. He was in a tough position.
All right, so let's drill down to some of the issues here, Gregory, starting with the Supreme Court nominee. What's really at the heart of all of this?
So obviously President Trump is the sitting president, and the Senate is a Republican Senate. And so President Trump's, the Democrats are very bothered because we're about a month out from the election. And so the American people are about to comment in a formal way on the parties that they want in charge and the political parties. And obviously, that has a real effect on the direction of public policy and the direction the country goes. And it's looking right now like, the country is in a very liberal mood, and Democrats will do well on Election Day in a month. It's just a question of how well will they do. And so for Democrats, this is very frustrating because if Ms. Barrett ends up on the court, there will be a solid 6-vote conservative majority that will have a very powerful effect on the kinds of decisions that the court makes. Before, it was very divided. So, there was a swing vote. So the court would kind of move. The court, has tended conservative for a long time. But with the swing vote, there was some swing back toward the middle on occasion. And so that's going to almost never happen now. And so, yeah, so Democrats are very upset about that. President Trump and Majority Leader McConnell are correct in that, from a formal perspective, he's the president. He gets to nominate a person. The Senate majority leader and the majority of the Senate, they get to decide, constitutionally, whatever they want to do with that. There's obviously nothing in the Constitution, nothing in statute that says anything about how close an election is. Democrats are upset because they feel like this isn't how it should be. That, because this is happening so close to the election and there's about to be a major change in direction, that we should wait. Public opinion polls show that most Americans would rather the Congress wait. 55, maybe 60% of Americans would rather wait and have the new president and the new Congress nominate the justice. But yeah, so it's it's kind of I guess a question of what you think kind of the best decision for the country would be.
Okay. All right, and on to the topic of taxes now, something that resurfaced the day before the debate when the New York Times began a scathing analysis of Donald Trump's taxes as the only U.S. president in modern times not to release his returns. What should be the next steps here, Gregory?
Well, my preference, as you noted, President Trump, is the only modern president not to release his tax returns. And so in the interest of sort of being more open and having transparency, it would be great if he released his tax returns. There's no good reason that I can see why he shouldn't, other than, the fact that he doesn't does lead me to believe there's probably something, politically unpalatable, or, something that there would be some kind of negative political effect that he's afraid of. It's more important that he releases returns compared to a lot of other typical politicians, because obviously he has this businessman background. And so he simply just has more money and has a lot more business interest than a typical politician does. And so that opens such a person up to potentially, being more open to influence. For example, we know President Trump has done a lot of business in Russia and some other countries. And so, people are concerned that, if he owes a lot of money to certain, foreign figures, and the New York Times article indicated this is true, that they could somehow leverage this kind of influence and get the president to make certain kinds of decisions that would not necessarily be in the U.S. interest.
Okay. One of the most shocking moments of the evening was Donald Trump's refusal to address the white supremacist question. In fact, he said, "Stand back and stand by." What should America make of that?
It's just a continuation of the pattern where he will not denounce, white supremacists. And I won't go into the background of that whole history, but, multiple times now. And it was just another example of that, of kind of showing, where his interests lie. I think he thinks that, white supremacists, in terms of the broad population, are a very, very narrow, tiny little sliver of the population. But perhaps President Trump believes that these people are important or an active part of his base. Maybe he naturally agrees with them and has sympathies, whatever the reason is. It was a pretty clear statement.
Yeah. All right. Another low point of the evening was when Trump interrupted Biden as he spoke directly with the viewers about the devastating effects of COVID-19. How does that help him?
Well, that's an interesting question, because I was wondering that too. And so I'll just share my thoughts. Again, I said this about Chris Wallace, and it's obviously just as true with President Trump. I'm not inside his head. I don't know what he was thinking. If President Trump wanted to behave in the debate in such a way, so polls show that President Trump is down, 6.5%, 7% or so. And so, that kind of, and only about 5 or 6% of Americans are undecided. So Vice President Biden is, pretty solidly ahead. There aren't a lot of undecided voters left. So things are looking pretty bad right now for President Trump in terms of getting reelected. And so, if he wanted to go to that debate and turn things around, he didn't want to behave the way he did. He would want to come forward. He would want to be respectful. He would, most importantly, he would want to articulate an agenda for the second term, which he hasn't done. However, if he's sort of given up on winning the election, and he's trying to simply limit the Republican losses, including his own, then, he's taken this approach, as we all know of sort of questioning how valid the election results will be and questioning the mail-in ballots. He's questioning the legitimacy of the democratic system. He's questioning the, legitimacy of our elections. And when he walks into a debate and he's so negative, he's so toxic, he makes people not want to watch the debate. And, if he can actually get people to not watch the debates, if he can get people to disengage, then, he can suppress participation, suppress interest. Maybe those Republican losses won't be quite so bad. So, I don't know why he did what he did. But if he's trying to, kind of poison the atmosphere so much and just turn Americans even more off to democracy, that might be what his end game was. I don't know.
Okay. Talk, of course, about the vaccine, which has become political. What is important for those watching to know as we head into Election Day with that particular issue, Gregory?
Well, under a traditional time, Americans could kind of just be on autopilot with this. We could just rely on our medical experts to, tell us when there's the vaccine ready and, how to get it and, that it's safe. And now clearly the president is politicizing this process, and he's, putting pressure on the officials who are in charge of the vaccine. He's putting a lot of pressure on them to release a vaccine, early, because he believes that there will be a political benefit to this. It's very clear that a safe vaccine will not be ready before the election. And so we as voters and citizens, unfortunately, very unfortunately, we have to not only kind of see the signals coming out from our public health leaders, but also read the news in terms of how much political pressure has been applied on them. And very unfortunately, we all have to make individual decisions about how safe we think the vaccine is based on kind of what the process has been.
Okay. There has been talk that this was more debacle than debate. We have 2 presidential debates to go. The first question is, do you think we'll realize those debates? And secondly, if we do, what are organizers and those moderators we referenced earlier supposed to do to change this outcome? What can they be doing between now and then to make sure that this is a much more productive 90 minutes?
Yeah, it's a very difficult situation. So I want to say this about the next debate between the presidential candidates. It will be a town hall format. So, they will be there in front of a group of ostensibly undecided voters. And, this format has been used for many years now. There have been many town hall debates in this format. And people say, that having the voters there right in front of you, that it tends to, kind of bring out the more genteel or respectful side in the candidates. So, will that be true in this case, especially with President Trump? I don't know. We'll have to see. No one expected, this kind of behavior in the first debate. And so I'm not going to try to predict what happens in the second. All I can tell you is that in general, that's kind of what people say. So I'm hopeful. I think the debates will go forward. My understanding is that the Biden campaign, people have said, Vice President Biden shouldn't debate anymore because so little substance comes out of the debates. And apparently his campaign's feeling is that especially with the COVID situation and the pandemic, it has really restricted the candidates' abilities to appeal and campaign directly to the American people. That typically this time of year, in a presidential election, candidates are dropping in every day into a different county all across in these battleground states, having these big rallies, 5, 10, 15, 20,000 people every day they do this. And when they drop into these places, they completely monopolize media coverage in that area for that day. In addition to that, the rallies and these kinds of things, campaigns are releasing new messages and programs and these kinds of things. They're just getting a lot of free media coverage. So a lot of that has been scaled back. And so voters have, relative to a normal campaign, they have limited opportunities to learn about these candidates. So I think Vice President Biden must feel like, these debates are especially important given that kind of circumstance. And he does want to avail himself of the opportunity to speak directly to the American people. We saw him do that in the debate the other night. He would just look in the camera and he would speak. And so in terms of, will the rules be changed or whatnot going forward? I don't know. I saw a statement from the Biden campaign officials saying that Biden and Harris will be in the debates going forward, but also that the Biden campaign will initiate a discussion with the Commission on Presidential Debates and talk about how to change things going forward. So ideas I've heard bandied around are, one, the moderator could have a kill switch on the microphones. So if someone is speaking, if the president or vice president were rolling over someone, they could turn their mic off. Option 2 is, only one of these people is supposed to be speaking at a time. So why does the other person even need their mic on? So that's proposal number 2. Just turn that mic off. If it's not their floor, turn it off. And then proposal 3 is dramatically limit the split screens. So if it's someone's turn to talk, drop the split screen, just give them a one screen. That way, you're seeing a lot less of kind of the reaction of the other person, which can really influence how people see the speaker. So I support all of those proposals. But this is obviously a highly political process, and whatever the changes are, both of the campaigns have to agree to those changes. And so we will just see, kind of what these look like going forward.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you specifically about the split screen. I thought that was a very interesting approach, especially given the number of interruptions that we had. And, it was already distracting enough, but to visually and then, audibly hear all of that going on. Interesting. So in the spirit of learning, you mentioned that if there were one thing that each candidate learned, from Tuesday's debate, what would that one thing be for each camp?
Well, here's what my advice to them would be for President Trump. Obviously, cool down. Governor Chris Christie, I saw him on ABC News afterwards. He helped President Trump prepare for the debate. He said, President Trump was too hot. Yeah, he needs to cool down. Let Vice President Biden speak. Kind of respect the boundaries of the time more, respect the format more. And then for Vice President Biden, I heard some other commentators say this. There's just been a lot of commentary in general, But my main takeaway would actually be to be more substantive, because Vice President Biden has a lot of specific program proposals out there. And I don't think he really did a very good job of explaining what those are. So he talked a lot about kind of the, tone and character. He was good on kind of the vague bits, and I thought he was very good at connecting with the audience. But we also do. Voters, we would like to know, what kind of plans you have in mind. For example, Vice President Biden has a multi-pronged platform about how to deal with COVID. I didn't hear him mention any of those specifics. And so, that would be really interesting to know and hear about.
Okay. Thank you. And in the minute we have remaining, I wanted to bring up the vice presidential candidates. They will have one opportunity to debate on Wednesday, October 7th. Gregory, briefly tell us what is important to know about each of them and how they are going to approach the stage.
Well, it's kind of the same kind of situation where Vice President Pence will be in the position to defend the incumbent administration, and then Senator Harris, as the vice presidential nominee, will be trying to attack and tear down, and also make an argument for a Biden administration that will be better for the country. So we'll just kind of see how that goes. I am confident that the tone will be much more positive. These are both very seasoned professional politicians, and the tone, it can't be worse than what happened, that's for sure. And I think it'll be a lot more like a traditional debate, probably even a lot more substantive. So I'm actually personally kind of looking forward to it, just to kind of maybe they can kind of show their superiors, kind of like how you do it and how it's done.
Yeah, and speaking of those debates, we do have a graphic that we want to put up for our viewers so that they know when those are taking place. Again, the vice presidential debate is Wednesday, October 7th. For those looking ahead to the presidential debates remaining, there are two, as we said. The first Thursday, October 15th, followed by Thursday, October 22nd. All those debates will happen from 8 to 9:30 Central. Gregory, I want to thank you so much for being with us today, for sharing your time and expertise. And, as so much else, with so much else, time will tell here. So thank you very much.
Time will tell. It always does. That's what people say.
Thank you. As we close, a look at scenes from Louisville State Recreation Area is seen through the lens of Joel Ochoa, a junior at UNO. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you next week.
Consider This is an issues and information program produced by UNO Television. More information and program archives can be found at netnebraska.org/considerthis. If you'd like to share your comments about this program, call UNO Television at 402-554-2516 during regular business hours, or send an email to cwyatt@unomaha.edu.
Hi everyone, I'm Kathy Wyatt. Welcome to the first edition, the 5th edition, 9th edition, the 13th edition of a special weekly series on Consider This, COVID-19.
There's thousands of small businesses out there that frankly can't do business.
Our anticipation and our hope was that we would just be closed for 2 weeks.
In Nebraska, we lost an estimated $88 million in sales and more than 24,000 jobs.
Probably the last time that happened was 1918 during the Spanish flu.
Different facilities have adapted better or worse to this.
When the floods hit, you could go help your neighbor and you could go to work side by side with them. Today, we can't do those things.
I think we've always had good teamwork, but now we know we need it.
If we cannot create immunity in between 60 and 70% of the population, we will never fully reopen.
This has been stressful for everybody.
This virus is not going to go away, not in any time soon.